consultation process for the design of the national red strategies being prevailed. It's the identification of protection risks and the analysis of public policy and options. As you well know, Costa Rica has a lot of policy on conservation, forest management, and also has the CONAFIFO program that is giving incentives in order to preserve and conserve the forest. So there has been a lot of dialogues on how, within the already existing policies, you can bring up new scenarios that we have to share within the overview that Costa Rica already has. Within that scenario, they developed the CESAR report, and they divided it in two major sectors. One is the analysis of the results and the recommendation. So they're starting doing a whole process of consultations on how should REDD be in Costa Rica. As you may know, Costa Rica rates of deforestation have reduced a lot. So in the case of REDD, it's really complex because they're trying to say, okay, is REDD going to be a key factor in Costa Rica or not? Because basically you have to reduce your rate of deforestation, but it's something that Costa Rica already did. So at this key moment, they're discussing of what are going to be the activities that are going to be led on REDD or accepted by REDD, not in a global factor, but also in a national strategy. So as we pointed out, they already have the CONAFIFO. You can search for that. There is an incentive, a government incentive, in order to pay for the not transforming the land from forest cover to agriculture. So that's one state. But the other state is that Costa Rica has already several laws that will interact in order to prevail that the forest can continue. So within that matter, the deforestation rate are not that high. So within that regard, there's a big question mark for them is how are they going to be implementing REDD? If the rates of deforestation are not that big, how is that going to be working within the national context? So they're trying to see, one of the things they're trying to push is baseline. Because if the baseline doesn't go back forward, all the work that they have done from 1977 until the day has been, well, not lost for them, but it's not being acknowledged by the market scenario. So it's a little bit complex, but at the moment they're trying to work on that. So the interaction is, and the recommendations are being acquired on land tenure, indigenous rights, who owns the land, what are the land tenure capacities, what can you do and what can you don't do with the land. The natural forest management, if it's going to be considered as a REDD activity or not. We are seeing that reforestation, restoration, in some cases potentially agroforestry, but forest management is going to be considered as a REDD activity within the context of Costa Rica and in a global context or not. So things that you have to discuss within the national law and also the mechanisms that are being developed in a global manner. You see numbers. Well. Then the difference of payments that Costa Rica has, they're trying to deliver payments specifically for regions that are indigenous management. And then the limitation of the economical activities and access to natural resources in the communities. As you may know, there are several limitations on how to prevail economical systems that can actually acknowledge that the forest is an economical activity that can be relied to the livelihoods so that you can improve their income. In the case of the structure that they are trying to implement in Costa Rica, they are trying to integrate 4 groups. And these groups are being integrated by different organizations of indigenous representations, and at the end they will have a national indigenous secretariat that will represent the 4 major groups of indigenous people in Costa Rica, and within that, big decisions are going to be taken as in a consultation and a free prior concerns mechanism, and then they will take these to indigenous representatives in the REDD board in a national scenario. So they are trying to build all the knowledge scaling up instead of scaling down. This is really a nice scenario. What the indigenous sector proposed to the government is respect the recognition of indigenous rights, traditional management and traditional structures, develop indigenous territories and alliances with the indigenous group, let them prevail that their own structures can be maintained and keep on tracking of what they're currently doing without fragmentizing them. Represent the recognition of their cultural contribution for natural resources and conservation. As we know, the traditional manage has to be acquired as a REDD activity. If not, we're trying to change everything within what they're currently doing. The need of a structure of cultural and indigenous institutionality. There's no need in order to rebuild the strategies or structures within the territories. They already have them. So what we need to prevail is that those structures that already exist can participating in the RED national strategy. We need to develop traditional techniques and science knowledge, improve the capacity of indigenous people to understand RED. One thing is that you tell them what RED is, and then they have to contextualize that within what they are seeing in their own view. And finally, strengthen cultural working with ethnic, sense of solidarity, collective knowledge, and consensus. If we're trying to see that RED is going to be capitalized mechanisms, we also have to acknowledge that within the system of indigenous people, a lot of those structures are not necessarily understood or not necessarily have to be implemented. So we have to be careful with that. In the case scenario that Katia is doing, this is the region of Talamanca that is bordered between Costa Rica and Panama. And this is the region that they are working. It's highly concentrated of indigenous representation. And this is the way that they are trying to integrate it. As you may notice, there are a lot of institutions that represent different indigenous organizations, and they are being integrated in the system called RIPCA, and are represented by BIPI and Cabecare Indigenous Network of the Atlantic region of Costa Rica. So what they are doing is integrating all of the already existing groups and trying to develop a regional table of discussion so that all the traditional management, the local statements, what they have known, can and will be prevailed and not change in order to provoke a discussion with the RED national strategy. This is what CATI is doing, is training cultural mediators. Why cultural mediators? What CATI is trying to implement is train people that is living there and understand all the cultural tradition management and knowledge of the indigenous people. So by telling them what we understand of RED, then they can translate it in a language and in a knowledge that indigenous people can actually acquire the needs that they have, so that they will understand, because most of the presentations that we have seen on RED, they start with a polar bear and say the icebergs are melting. Indigenous people have never been out of their community, so they're saying, what's a polar bear? Why do I care about it? But then when you contextualize RED within what is already happening with their communities, they're seeing drought, they're seeing floods, they're seeing that the agriculture is changing. So what CATI is trying to do is build cultural mediators based on their knowledge, how to translate RED so that indigenous people could actually acquire new knowledge on how climate change and forests are related and how are they going to be affected by it. If you see, there are 4 basic steps. The first step that CATI did is a whole understanding of climate and climate change. They work a lot with CI in order to understand what capacity building tools were out there, in order to gather as much information as they could. Then understand finance mechanisms, payment for a consistent service, based on what is already happening within the country. And then they started the phase 1, the role of the forest in climate change, then the regional initiative on RED, what's happening in the region, in Central America, and then what is happening within the national context. Then they started working with Talamanca indigenous territory and tried to see how the RED strategy is actually going down to the territories, and further important is how that knowledge is going to be prevailed within the national requirement of building that national strategy. And if you see, in the second phase, based on all the information that they gathered, they started training the cultural mediators, and those are the guys that are going really deep in their own knowledge, in their own context, in their own language, in their own communities, trying to tell what RED could be for them, based on their building capacities that CATI is doing to them. So they are the ones that are going deep within the forest, deep within the communities, and trying to translate what RED could be for them. And with that understanding, they can react, and then they can put their ideas, their concerns, their worries, and that could come up again, upscaling, and be discussed at a national level. These are some of the pictures of the pilot testing that they are doing in training of course, of the cultural mediators. If you see, there are a lot of women, a lot of men, and most important, if you see here, the guides that CATI are doing are trying to be interactive, so that when you have a community coming, you have men, you have women, and importantly, you have kids. So the guidelines that CATI are trying to do is that when you have a training, not such as this, but when you have a community training, you have to be really flexible, because you have kids, and so if the kids are not putting attention, the mama will go out, and the father is not putting attention, so you have to be really flexible and really bipartisan and really dynamic. So what CATI is trying to do is they're bringing stuff in order to teach the kids what their mama is learning. They're working with women and men so that we can see the roles of each of them are going to play on the red scenario, and how that roles are going to be impacted, and how that impact will be acquired in the National Red Strategy. At the current moment, Talamanca was a successful study. They're doing a really great job. Now with IUCN, we're trying to implement this same scenario in Darien, in Panama. And actually, they are talking with the RIPCA, the platform that we discussed. They are talking with the National Red Strategy in order to duplicate this system in the other 4 territories that I mentioned before. So that this system could be like the free, prior, and consent system of a national consultation. And within that, they can build the National Red Strategy where they acknowledge and the consent of indigenous people. Lesson learned at the moment, indigenous sector has shown a high level of commitment and organization to participate in RED processes. They are willing to go within deep, know what RED is. They don't have a negative towards RED, but they want to learn how are they going to be linked with that. Secondly, opportunities bringing the importance of topic to discussions. We point out what are critics for them is that the rights, the land tenure, the traditional management, their knowledge, their culture is not being threat by RED. Then it's important to establish an open participation inclusive mechanism to generate a sense of ownership for them. So they have to feel that the RED strategy was built with them, not was imposed to them. That's really critical in this scenario. Then they need to implement policies that recognize, support, and promote the role of traditional knowledge within the management of natural resources. As I pointed out in the first map, a lot of natural resources that still prevail, a lot of the forest cover, are being managed by indigenous people. So they want that their knowledge and their tradition could be stated in a RED national strategy, stated and implemented at the same time. And finally, the importance of continuous providing technical support to strengthen local capacity. As we may know, all of the countries are struggling to develop the RED national strategy. There's still a long way to go. In a global context, we have serious doubt of what RED is going to become. If it's RED plus, if it's RED plus plus, if we're going to see a RED mechanism of economics or not, if we're going to see a market. So everything is a little bit blurry. So at the moment, we're trying to concentrate on what is going to be RED in a national strategy. What RED will be for Costa Rica, what RED will be for Panama, are totally different contexts. And maybe today in the afternoon, we can share a little bit of what's the focus for RED in Guatemala, in Mexico, in Panama. It's more or less the same, but at the same time, based on the national context, it switches a little bit. So then we can further discuss. But the key essence of this work is to try to prevail that the indigenous traditional management, knowledge, rights, and culture can be within the national strategy. Thank you very much. I tried my best to show you what CATI has been doing for almost a year. It's really high complex. They have gone deep within the forest with indigenous people, going back and forward, going to UNFF, UNFCCC, to CBD, talking to FCPF, to UN-RED, to FAO. So just learning the different titles that RED has within it is hard enough. And then translate it to a level that indigenous people could actually see what can come out of it. Remember that within the indigenous culture, they are used to seeing impact and activities, not that blur that we're trying to diffuse on RED. So it's really confusing for them. So if you need, Elena was kind enough to put me as a special thanks, but I really don't have the capacity in order to further more enough information. But if you need further information regarding of CATI, Elena will be more than happy to communicate to you. There's her email, and then if you have more questions, she can send you a Skype and have a conference. And she told me that the guidelines for Costa Rica are in the final details. They're talking to CI because they share a lot of knowledge with CI, and she asked me to really say thanks to all the organizations that facilitated this process, and a special thanks to CI for all the help that they have done developing these guidelines. So the guidelines are going to be in about a month or so. It's going to be in PDF, so if you want to ask for that guidance, they can share it. And at this current moment, we're trying to implement this IUCN CATIE in Taniente, in another indigenous territories in America. I tried my best. I hope you understand me and what Elena has been doing for a year. If not, she's going to send me back to Jeju when I come back to Costa Rica. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Georgia Kwok to speak on behalf of IUCN.
Thank you very much. And I'm making this presentation probably on behalf of your so keen, but I'll try to focus a little bit on what we've been doing the past years to improve our capacity to include pro-poor issues or the community-related issues in the RED process. And I will not be talking about the specific approach to building capacity, but a little bit more about the framework that we've been developing. That could include tools, could include approaches, or could include a number of concepts that we would like to see put forward as we move forward with the designing and implementation of REDS. What we've realized is that we've been working a lot with indigenous peoples, forest-dependent communities, and it seems to be quite clear that vulnerability is the main characteristic of those who depend most of nature, given the high challenge, competition, and so on that is arising. And forest-dependent communities become more and more vulnerable in front of what we consider today to be a kind of land grab, in front of the new forest policies that are detrimental most of the time. Because conservation policies, new forest policies that promote allocation of forest areas to logging concessions, protected areas, sometimes community forests, but not necessarily really focusing on community, restraint communities to try to confine them in a kind of very limited territory where they cannot really employ their livelihood as it was before, thus fragilizing their lives. And the forest indigenous people today face the challenge of adapting or simply disappearing. Could be their culture that is has to meet this challenge, or their existence as a community. Different areas in the world face different challenges. The Central African region, where I come from, has the particularity that there are no separate territories where indigenous people live, as we could see maybe in Latin America or other areas in the world. Indigenous people live among other communities, thus making the challenge of their tenure rights more significant. Also, we have a long tradition of conservation and modern management that's excluded in the region too. Well, more to that, seasons, we could put this as a consequence of climate change or any other thing. Communities in rural areas face more uncertainty and unpredictability regarding seasons, the way seasons appear. They live in a kind of natural cycle of nature, depending on the harvest, depending on the cycle of nature, seasons that appear. And this is becoming more and more uncertain and fragilizing their livelihood because they don't know where to plant, when to harvest, and how to organize themselves to produce what they need for their livelihood. I already mentioned what I was coming from. Now, we also consider that forest communities are an opportunity, but yet they face the challenge for REDD. As REDD is an opportunity for forest communities, but yet there is a challenge because these forest communities, the engagement of this forest community is something still questionable. How do we get them to become stakeholders in REDD? How do they get them participate in, contribute to, and influence REDD loss processes in a way that favors their REDD? That remains a question. And we, as IUCN, for the past few years, we've been working to develop what we call the POCORED approach. We started this not really knowing what the content of a POCORED would be, but as we have been working in 5 tropical countries to experiment this approach, lessons learned has helped us to come up with a set of principles